back to IVF in Your Pocket, your waiting room companion. This is your host, Alexandra Gary Stock. I'm a reproductive therapist in San Francisco, California, passionate about helping people navigate the really intense IVF journey. Please remember, this is not a substitute for therapy or medical advice. Welcome back. Today we're going to be taking a question from S. S writes in saying, I've been listening to a few of your episode podcasts. I'm particularly interested in any tips you have when there is pretty massive tension between your partner, particularly when the two of you are not seeing eye to eye about IVF or the next steps. Can you help out in any way? Thank you, S, for your question. This is a huge topic, so it's why I wanted to select your question to go a little bit deeper into this. I talked a little bit about this in the episode around intimacy and then the first episode about how to determine next steps, but let's take some time to go a little bit deeper. You don't say specifically where there's a difference, but that's great because there can be so many ways that there are differences between you and your partner about how you're experiencing the IVF journey, and then of course what you think is the next best step if things aren't going the way you had anticipated. So often there is tension, of course, when things aren't going as expected. They're taking longer, and unfortunately that can be the case for a lot of people who are doing IVF. Usually, not always, couples can start out on the same page and hopeful and optimistic, a little discouraged, obviously, if you're coming in to IVF as a result of a fertility issue, which of course not everyone is, but it can be, discouraging to start the journey if you've had a long journey of trying to conceive up until now. But usually partners are pretty hopeful at the beginning of the journey, and then tension can build as the journey continues and it gets very discouraging. So here are some tips and tools to think about tension and trying to get back in sync with your partner, because of course it's so much easier to go through the journey if the two of you are aligned. So the first is really to anticipate and expect that there are going to be bumps and to be able to talk about that. I think it's really helpful to try to talk about this as soon as possible. That this is a journey you're embarking on that is high stakes. There's a lot of investment going into it. It's probably not exactly the path you wanted to take. And so just anticipating that there's going to be some tension and you're probably not going to be aligned every second. There are two of you experiencing this path very differently, most likely. And you can, of course, come together in those places where you align, but also I think it's important to acknowledge that there's going to be some tension and some bumps. So that's the first tip, is to just anticipate that there might be tension and to be able to openly talk about that and to get out in front of the tension, knowing that it might come about. There's probably going to be some tension that comes with this journey, particularly if it's not going the way that the two of you had hoped. The other really important thing is to try to reach out to support, therapy support, any other support, but therapy is really helpful for couples during this time. Even if you have never been in therapy before, this is a great time to get support for the couple. A good place to start looking is your insurance company and seeing what is covered, because insurance can reimburse therapy. Some plans do reimburse for out-of-network providers, so it's good to check in and see your plan to see if therapy is accessible. Of course, therapy can be very expensive and it's hard to take on another expense during this journey, but I just want to put a plug out for looking into your insurance company and seeing what your insurance company offers and seeing if you can find someone at a network that then you can submit that therapist super bill to your insurance and get a portion, if not sometimes honestly a large portion, back from your insurance company to get the couple's support, because having a facilitator during this process is really helpful. Even if you're a couple that prides yourself on excellent communication, it's just really nice to have a facilitator and a third party really helping you see things that you might not be seeing and anticipate dilemmas and work as a partner alongside the two of you. The other tip and tool that is extremely helpful, and this is what I recommend for you, is to go back to the root of the problem or tension with your partner and kind of think about the problem as an onion and really peel back the layers, the specific layers that are important, that are getting in the way. Perhaps that's a retrieval cycle that didn't go well and then frustration about whether you should continue. So peel that back if you can. It's hard when you're in it. But go back to the heart of why you started. At some point you were on the same page. You wanted to build your family. And so it can be helpful to take off the layers of what is the current external stress related to IVF and go back to when you were on the same page. And that was likely when you started the journey and you both really wanted a family, and really talk more about those initial motivations that brought you into this path in the first place. And then go from there and kind of build out to the extra layers that are the tension of this onion and see where things have gone awry. Now, it's super different for each dyad, of course, but what we often see, and I think what couples often see, is that somewhere there was a place where there was a bit of a disconnect, and that is often linked to a discouragement or a grief or some kind of disappointment or a frustration. So you want to kind of backtrack. So you start by getting back to where your goals were originally around wanting to build your family, and then see where things went awry. And that is usually around some kind of frustration, and then giving a lot of space for that frustration, and then going back, realigning, and seeing if there's a way, seeing, are we still aligned in the way that we were when we started? Is this still both of our goals? And if so, do we need to reassess something about moving forward that works for both of us? So it's a bit of a compromise here. And really staying open and listening to your partner, or, and your partner listening to your disappointment, frustration, grief, worry, and giving a lot of space for that, and then seeing if you can fine tune the next steps based on where you are now and how that connects back to the original goal that the two of you had. So this may mean setting some limits on the external next steps, and that might help you realign with your partner about what's next. Because say, I don't, again, know your specific example and context, but say it is you maybe not wanting to do another retrieval and your partner wanting to do 5 more retrievals. You might then need to get aligned and discuss that you do still want to build your family, but that it's been more exhausting than you were anticipating, and you are done physically and you feel isolated and want your social life back, and it feels like the IVF toll is really impacting you in a way you weren't anticipating. So the two of you might then get reconnected to your goal and then come up with a plan that works better. And that might mean setting limits around what you're going to do before you look at another step. So in this case, it could be like, we have insurance coverage for 2 more retrieval cycles. I'm going to try 1 more and then see what happens, and then think about another way to build your family. Now, this is a great time to get your care team involved and getting a second opinion, of course, about what might be recommended to get to the outcome that you're hoping. But it's really important to go back and reconnect and see, are we still aligned on our goal of building a family? Is that still true for us? And yes, if so, what do we need in order to get through it so that we both feel comfortable? And it gets more complex if one partner is wanting to, say, move to donor sperm, donor egg, and the other partner doesn't. Of course, that becomes a series of longer discussions, and really beneficial to have someone guiding you through that. But it is helpful to realign and see where there can be some changes implemented, because oftentimes people start this journey and they don't think that there needs to be any limits on how much they're going to do. They just think I think most people think it's just going to work. And when it doesn't, it's really discouraging. So the other tip there is to really leave space for the grief that has happened. Because if you're still on the journey, it's likely something hasn't gone to plan. And that is a form of loss. And so it's really important to acknowledge the loss in the couple and how that is different. It could be different for each of you. How your partner experiences loss and what they're feeling is different than how you might be. And being accepting and loving in that space is really important. And then finally, it is helpful to rethink about how the two of you are navigating day-to-day IVF. Is there some tweaks you can do in this plan? Does one partner need to take on more? Do you need to switch duties if you can, of course? Say does one person need to take over giving the shots to the other partner? Does one partner need to take over the financial piece? Does one partner need to take over the communication piece, and kind of redistributing the weight, the mental load of IVF can be helpful. As I said in the kind of how IVF affects intimacy episode as well, that's really important. As is looking at your own personal life and seeing what you need to shift in order to continue on this path in a new way. So that might mean, you know what, I am going to just go do 3 back-to-back retrievals, and that's going to be it. And for that time, I'm going to be really focused on the retrieval process. And then at that point, I'm not doing it anymore. So a nice healthy boundary that works for you. And then for the next X couple of months, you're going to be committed to that. And then you're not going to do that. So there's a lot of reevaluating that happens on this path. And there's a lot of reevaluating communication that is needed to get back in sync with your partner. It is possible. And you can come out stronger than you were before. So thank you so much for your question. I hope this is helpful. That concludes our episode for today. Please go ahead and send me your questions. I'd love to hear where you're getting stuck or where you'd want extra support on the journey. You can go ahead and email me at alexandrapsychotherapy@gmail.com. You can also find me on my website at alexandragarystock.com. And until our next episode, remember, you are not alone.